So today we're jumping into Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive. And this isn't just another health book. It's really a whole new framework for thinking about our long-term health. A guide for not just adding years to your life, but more importantly, adding life to your years. And the story really kicks off with this moment of brutal honesty. You've got Dr. Attia, a top surgeon at Johns Hopkins, literally at the pinnacle of his field, and he has this realization that his own health is a complete train wreck. Here he is, an expert at saving other people's lives, and he was completely failing to save his own. And this contrast is just so stark. It's at the very heart of his story. On the one hand, you have Surgeon Attia. He's a master of what he calls fast death, dealing with immediate life-threatening things like car accidents or aggressive cancer. But then there's patient Attia. He was overweight, metabolically a mess, and heading straight for the slow death of chronic disease. It gave him this really unique and, you can imagine, painful perspective on the blind spots in our medical system. So, this personal crisis forces him to start questioning the entire system he dedicated his life to. He calls this system Medicine 2.0, and it's basically the health map that most of us are still using today. And the big problem? The map is completely outdated. Now, don't get me wrong, Medicine 2.0 is amazing at certain things. If you get a nasty infection or get into a bad accident, it is an absolute lifesaver. It gave us antibiotics, modern surgery, the works. But its entire model is built to do one thing: wait. It waits for a problem to show up, and then it reacts with some powerful tool. And when it comes to the chronic diseases that are most likely to affect us, well, that reactive approach is a total failure. See, our modern killers aren't infectious plagues or predators. Attia calls them the Four Horsemen of chronic disease. These are the slow, creeping conditions that Medicine 2.0 is just sitting around waiting to diagnose, often when it's way too late. We're talking about atherosclerosis, which is the root of heart disease and stroke, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, and metabolic dysfunction, which includes things like type 2 diabetes. And this chart just lays it all out, plain as day. Look, our overall death rate took a nosedive in the 20th century, which is great, but if you take out all the incredible gains we made against infectious diseases, the decline is, well, it's tiny. We've made, as Attia puts it, scant progress against the Four Horsemen. This quote from one of Attia's old professors is just chilling, because it perfectly nails the ultimate failure of a reactive system. For a huge number of people, the very first symptom they have of heart disease is dying from it. That's not a healthcare strategy. It's just a roll of the dice. So, okay, if the old map is broken, we obviously need a new one. And this is where Attia introduces his big idea, a completely different framework he calls Medicine 3.0. The core idea here is a massive shift in how we think. Instead of waiting around to get sick, the goal is to be proactive and prevent the horsemen from ever showing up in the first place. And it's not just about living longer, that's lifespan. It's about maximizing your health span, the part of your life where you're healthy, vibrant, and can do the things you love. He has this analogy in the book that I think is just perfect. When did Noah build the ark? Long before it started to rain. See, Medicine 2.0 is scrambling to find an umbrella after the downpour starts. Medicine 3.0 is about checking the long-range forecast and building that ark decades in advance while you're still healthy and strong. And what are we building the ark for? Attia has this brilliant framing for it, the Centenarian Decathlon. The goal isn't just to make it to 100, it's to be able to do the 10 or so things that are most important to you at that age. Maybe that's hiking or lifting up a great-grandchild or just being able to carry your own groceries. It completely changes the game from a fearful avoidance of sickness into a positive, exciting goal. All right, so how do we actually do this? How do we train for that decathlon? Well, Attia boils it down to 4 key pillars that we can all build our own personal health strategy around. These are the 4 big levers we can pull. First up, exercise, which is the absolute bedrock. Then you've got nutrition, the fuel you put in your body. Third is sleep, which is your non-negotiable recovery and repair time. And finally, emotional health, which really provides the why for all of this. They might sound basic, but the way Medicine 3.0 approaches each one is incredibly strategic. And let's be super clear about this one. Of all 4 pillars, Attia says exercise is, without a doubt, the single most powerful tool we have to extend not just our lifespan, but our health span. The data is just overwhelming. By a long shot, it is the most potent longevity drug on the entire planet. But there's another pillar that gets overlooked all the time, and it's one Attia gets really personal about in the book: emotional health. Think about it. You can have the most physically perfect body in the world, but if you're not emotionally well, what's the point? This is a critical, absolutely non-negotiable part of the whole equation. Okay, so this is where it gets really personal for you. Just pause for a second and actually think about this. What 10 things would you want to be able to do? Is it playing with your grandkids, traveling, working in your garden? When you define your own Centenarian Decathlon, it gives you a powerful, specific why for all the work. It turns these abstract health goals into a real vision for your future. And this brings us to what might just be the most profound part of the entire book. Attia realized that all the science of longevity is pretty pointless if you don't also explore the art of living. In other words, why do you even want to live longer? He talks about this incredible idea from the writer David Brooks, the difference between resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Your resume virtues are your accomplishments, right? The stuff you'd put on your LinkedIn profile. But your eulogy virtues, that's who you were as a person. Your kindness, your character, how you made people feel. And Attia had this jarring realization that his whole life had been spent chasing the first list. The big turning point for him was at a friend's funeral. He was listening to all these beautiful, loving stories people were telling, and none of them had anything to do with her career achievements. And it just hit him. He asked himself if anyone would be saying those things about him. He didn't think so, and he knew right then that it had to change. This question from his therapist, the famous Esther Perel, is the ultimate gut check, isn't it? It just cuts through all the science, all the tactics, all the biohacking. Why would you want to live longer if you're miserable? The quest for a longer life has to go hand in hand with the quest for a happy, meaningful life. Otherwise, it's an empty win. And really, that's what Outlive leaves you with. It's this one powerful question. The science gives us the tools, the how, to build a longer, healthier life. But the art is deciding what to do with that time. It's not just about outrunning the Four Horsemen. It's about having a reason for the ride in the first place. So, what story are you writing?